Geoengineering is defined as the artificial modification of the Earth's climate. Geoengineers are proposing spraying 10 to 20 million tons of toxic aluminum and other substances into our sky for the stated goal of cooling our planet.
So let me distinguish these two different kinds of geoengineering as clearly as I can. So the first one is we call solar radiation management, and that's the idea that you could put mostly reflective particles or other means to make the Earth whiter, effectively to increase the Earth's reflectivity, reducing the amount of heat that's absorbed by the sun, and therefore exerting some overall cooling tendency on the Earth.
I think, though the initial results of climate models indicate that reflection of sunlight away from the Earth can offset most climate change in most places most of the time. But it will damage some places.
We've mostly thought about sulfur, and nevertheless there might be some good reasons to think about alumina. It turns out, first of all, there's been a lot of work on the environmental consequences of alumina in the stratosphere. There's a bunch of papers going back to the 70s that look at the radiative and ozone-destroying properties of alumina in the stratosphere, and those make you think it might be useful. Do this in just a jet in a very simple way. Make high-quality alumina particles just by spraying alumina vapor out, which oxidizes. So.
Ich bin Luft- und Raumfahrttechniker und habe Flugzeuge repariert und so weiter. Ich möchte euch jetzt mal ganz kurz erzählen, was ich gemacht habe. Ich habe auf dem militärischen Sonderflughafen Oberpfaffenhofen in Zusammenarbeit mit dem Deutschen Luft- und Raumfahrtzentrum ein Flugzeug mit einer Sprüheinrichtung ausgestattet, was an unserem Himmel giftige Substanzen versprüht. Als ich mit den Beweisen dafür, den Fotos und allem drum und dran, zu meiner grünen Abgeordneten im Bürgerbüro gegangen bin und gesagt habe, hier, so sieht's aus, ich stelle mich jedem Untersuchungsausschuss zur Verfügung, ist 3 Tage später mein Boss zu mir nach Hause gekommen und hat gesagt, ich muss dich entlassen, da werden von ganz oben große Räder gedreht, die ich nicht mehr halten kann. Ich kriege keinen Job mehr in der Luftfahrt. Jeder, der gerne wissen möchte, wie das aussieht und wie das gemacht wird, der kann dann zu mir kommen, ich habe hier alles mit. Ich möchte dazu nur sagen, als wir fertig waren mit dem Umbau dieses Fliegers, also wir haben den innen entkernt, haben die ganzen Tanks eingebaut, haben die Leitung gelegt, haben diese Sprüheinrichtung installiert, da wurde uns gesagt, ich war ja Zivilangestellter unter Kontrolle des Militärs, dass das Deutsche Luft- und Raumfahrtzentrum das praktisch als Test macht, ja, der Flieger fliegt vorne weg, dann fliegt denen ihr Partikelmessflugzeug hinterher und misst Partikeldichte, Ausbringungsparameter und so weiter und so weiter. Die wollen ja schließlich wissen, wie sich das verbreitet. Und wir waren fertig und da kam dann das Militär und hat uns angewiesen, Vollschutzanzüge und Atemmasken zu tragen, denn die Tanks müssen jetzt befüllt werden und die Substanzen, die da reinkommen, ja, Aluminium, Sulfide, Bariumoxide, was weiß ich, sind durchsetzt mit nanopartikelgroßen Polymerverbindungen, die sind für euch hochgiftig, also ihr habt jetzt Schutzanzüge zu tragen. Und so viel dazu. Also ich wollte nur sagen, wir fliegen in eine ökologische Katastrophe und jeder, der das nicht begreifen will, den kann ich gerne die Beweise zeigen und ich stelle mich jedem Untersuchungsausschuss zur Verfügung. Ich bin bereit.
Mountains has a real mystery on its hands. The official explanation here is that jet contrails are causing strange lines in the sky and that it's pollen making people sick on the ground. But others are convinced it is something else, and they ask, is the government experimenting with our weather?
There was a huge dust cloud.
Longtime Cedar Glen resident Gretchen Sherman says she has never seen anything like it.
How thick was it? Oh, it covered the entire Cedar Glen area.
A cloud of dust, leaving a sticky yellow slime all over her car. It happened again last February, and calls began pouring into the local Alpenhorn newspaper.
And they had a tremendous upsurge of children that were not going to school at that time.
Pharmacist Ed Burrows says it is the most mysterious illness he's seen in 22 years on the mountain.
A lot of eye infection problems, upper respiratory problems, nosebleeds.
The nearby March Air Force Base say it didn't come from them. Others said it was a pollen cloud. The Department of Health found a yellowish tint on a tissue submitted for testing. But, quote, there was no sign of any biological form, such as cedar pollen, and the test was ruled inconclusive. And it wasn't long before things ballooned into a sky-high mystery. The story is not just here in Crestline and the alleged yellow cloud. People say the government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail. So what I look up there and I think are contrails, you're telling me are chemtrails?
Yes, that a contrail would be dissipated by now.
It would?
Yes, it would.
Chemtrails. On the internet, they are cited as proof of the government creating clouds to combat global warming. In response, the Air Force says that, quote, there is no such thing as a chemtrail. The actual contrails are a safe and natural phenomenon. And that people are seeing more contrails simply because there are more jets forming large clouds, depending on weather conditions, as in this video of alleged chemtrails shot near San Francisco.
I think these are contrails.
Professor Gregory Benford of UC Irvine works with the Department of Energy on weather research.
That's very odd. They could be very large contrails.
He says the DOE doesn't know of any jets spraying chemicals to affect the weather. However, he says we will probably see it in the near future.
You've got to, in a sense, engineer all these so you get the right kind of clouds for the effects we want.
It is called geoengineering, fighting global warming by putting a chemical dust in the atmosphere and reflecting harmful radiation back into space.
You could use barium oxide, for example, which makes big fluffy clouds. You could use tiny little bits of aluminum, which is benign in the environment, and essentially manage the climate.
And what I found was unusual spiking since the early 1990s in barium, aluminum.
But Rosalind Peterson of California Skywatch says health department records show a sharp increase in both chemicals in the water supply of Northern California, dating from the time the huge contrails first appeared over her home in Mendocino County.
What's the significance of the barium and the aluminum?
I went and got all the tests, and all these things in the same test would be up way over state and federal standards. It had to be airborne, because how could it get to such diverse regions of our county? We have jets going in every direction. X's, east, west, north, south, circles. There is something going on in the air. I don't know exactly what, but I think there's some experimentation.
Is it legal?
I don't know because we haven't had a public discussion.
But what is unknown today may be actual fact tomorrow, thanks to a bill soon to be voted on in the U.S. Senate, a Weather Modification Act, calling for research in, quote, attempting to change or control by artificial methods the natural development of atmospheric cloud forms.
Doesn't it seem to you that they're going to be doing it in the future for sure?
Yes. And if they are, I want to know about it.
In the meantime, a lot of people are wondering if they'll ever get clear skies and a clear answer.
The legislation is there, therefore somebody's thinking about this. How does this make sense?
I don't know, maybe they're practicing.
Over Cedar Glen, over Arrowhead.
I guess you have to try it out before you use it. I'm not sure.
Data center. The death dumps, otherwise known as chemical trails, are being dropped and sprayed throughout the United States, in England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Europe, and I have personally seen them not only in the United States but in Mexico and Canada. Birds are dying around the world. Fish are dying by the hundreds of thousands around the world. This is genocide. This is poison. This is murder by the United Nations. This element within our society that's doing this must be stopped. I happen to know of 2 of the locations where the airplanes are that dump this crap on us. 4 of the planes are out of the Air National Guard, Lincoln, Nebraska, and the other planes are out of Fort Still, Oklahoma. I personally have observed the planes that were standing still in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, at the Air National Guard. They have no markings on them. They're huge, bomber-like airplanes with no markings. This is a crime. Crime against humanity, crime against America, crime against the citizens of this great country. They must be stopped. What is wrong with Congress? This has an effect on their population and their people and their friends and their relatives and themselves. What's wrong with them? What's wrong with the pilots who are flying these airplanes? They're dumping this crap, this poison, on their own families. Somebody has to do something about it. Somebody in Congress has to step forward and stop it now.
Už jste někdy slyšeli o chemtrails? Pokud ne, dávejte dobrý pozor. Jde totiž o zdraví. Podle některých odborníků se z letadel cíleně vypouštějí chemikálie, které mají zpomalit globální oteplování. Za letadly na obloze se pak objevují čáry, které mizí až po několika hodinách. Zaznamenali je nejen ve Spojených státech, ale prý už se objevily i u nás. Vypouštěné chemikálie přitom můžou vážně poškodit vaše zdraví.
Takhle to vypadalo například v dubnu přímo nad Hradcem Králové. I když by měl nad městem vést jen jeden letový směr, v jednu chvíli bylo na nebi vidět hned několik různě se křížících letadel. Stopy, které po nich zůstaly, ale nezmizely do několika minut jako normálně.
Tyto stopy vlastně zůstávají na nebi až třeba několik hodin, až se rozplynou v atmosféře. Jsou to těžké kovy.
Podle odborníků na chemtrails to jsou hlavně soli bária a aluminiový prášek. V Americe se už odborníkům podařilo zjistit, jaké přímé dopady má tento postřik na lidi. Nejčastěji trpí migrénou a chronickou únavou.
Myslím si, že určitě by lidi si toho mohli začít všímat, protože soli bária a thorium opravdu jsou zdraví velice škodlivé.
I když první zkoumání chemtrails probíhalo už v roce 1999, žádná vláda dodnes nic neprozradila. Přitom nádrže s chemikáliemi mají být i v civilních letadlech. První zemí, která o chemtrails začala otevřeněji mluvit, bylo Německo.
Je zřejmé, že obrovské regiony jsou znečišťovány těmito akcemi, ale všechno musí být zveřejněno. Vláda musí poskytnout vysvětlení nic netušícím obyvatelům.
České aerolinie si nejsou vědomy, že by se do leteckého petroleje, jež odebíráme, přidávaly jakékoliv další chemické látky.
Hlavním účelem rozprašování chemikálií má být zabraňování globálnímu oteplování. O tom, že jsme ale nedobrovolně očkováni ze vzduchu a ani nevíme čím, o tom už se nemluví. Z Hradce Králové, David Mimra, televize Prima.
Děsivé fotografie dokazují, že nad Evropou mělo znovu začít masivní práškování chemtrails v rámci atmosférického geoengineeringu Dark Sky s cílem globálního zatmívání planety. Geostacionární družice odhaluje, že letadla znovu práškují pravidelně.
На психику жителей Земли воздействуют с помощью химикатов. В небе сразу над несколькими странами в разных частях планеты зафиксировано появление странных полос, которые остаются после пролета самолетов.
There is a line of research on what's called geoengineering, which are various techniques that would delay the heating to buy us 20 or 30 years to get our act together. Now you hope that's just an...
Said it this way, and the rain that's falling in Japan is a deadly rain. It's already heading towards South America now. But the people on the news say it's not so bad. They say it won't affect you, then they add in fact a little radiation here and there is actually good for you.
That's good for you in reduced cases.
What a crock of shit, what a bunch of liars. They don't even care how many millions will die, cause they're part of the machine, telling us to buy into whatever it is that they decide will be better for the masses, best for the regime. Plague on the loose, you better get your vaccine. Better rising up to let us see for means. Can't you see they're killing us with their chemical sprays and aspartame, with the terminated seeds from a war machine, with the modified food we be eating all day. Can't you see it's killing us? Have you ever had toxins seeping through your pores? Or heard of such a thing as a silent force? How come the same people that made Agent Orange are going off corn? It doesn't make any sense until you get this. They sell the food that is making us sick, and when we get sick, the very same people are selling us the medicine. It's a military, industrial / pharmaceutical and agricultural global complex that is taking control because we are letting them. You better wisen up so that it's for means. Can't you see they're killing us with their chemical sprays?
Various economic changes that have even flattened it all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see...
Of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI and other geoengineering initiatives.